Hey guys, in this video we're going to be covering MongoDB in depth, and most of the content from this video is part of a 10 project course in MongoDB that I did. So if you enjoy it, I would suggest checking that course out too, and I'll leave a link in the description. So we're not going to be building a web application or anything like that using other technologies. I really want to just focus on MongoDB and basically the syntax, how to create collections, insert documents, update and delete documents, create users, and some of the other fundamentals of MongoDB. All right, so Mongo is what's called a NoSQL database. And there's different types of NoSQL databases. So to be more specific, it's called a document database. All right, data or records are stored as documents, and they use JSON-like syntax. So if you don't know what JSON is, it's JavaScript object notation, and I'll get into the syntax in a minute. So NoSQL databases are much different than relational databases like, say, MySQL or Postgres. With a relational database, you really have to map out everything. You need to figure out the exact schema, including what tables you use, what fields you'll use, and even the types of fields. Okay, whether it's going to be a string or an integer, all that stuff. So with NoSQL, there's not really any of that. I mean, you should plan out the structure of your database and your collections, but you don't have to do any predefined structuring before you build your application. All right, one of the huge advantages to MongoDB and NoSQL databases in general is scaling. Okay, they're really easy to scale compared to SQL or relational databases. They're also much faster in most types of operations. There are some things that you'd benefit by using relational databases, but when you're dealing with just a crap load of data, then NoSQL is usually the way to go. All right, as long as there's not really a ton of interconnected relationships. All right, so enough talking about methodology. Let's jump in and get started. So I'm using Windows. In the course I mentioned, we do use Linux, Ubuntu quite a bit, but for this particular video, we're using Windows. So we're going to go to mongodb.com, and you want to click the download button here, and that should take us to the download page, and we're going to go ahead and choose this version here. It says Windows Server 2008. That's fine, 64-bit. So we're going to go ahead and download that. All right, which I already did. So it's 104 megabytes, so it might take a couple minutes. But I already have it downloaded, so I'm going to cancel that. And we're going to go ahead and run that MSI file. So we're going to click Next and just go through this. We'll accept the terms. Now right here I'm going to choose custom because I want to change the location. Okay, by default it's going to go in your program files folder, and then MongoDB server 3.2. I want it much more simple than that, the path. So I want to just go right to my C drive. So in my C drive I'm going to create a folder called MongoDB, and then we're going to just open that and click OK. Okay, so much simpler. It's just right in the C drive. Okay, we'll click Next and then Install, and we'll say yes. Okay, so that's finished. We'll click Finish, and there's still a couple steps we need to do. We need to open up a command line as administrator. Okay, and I have that nice and big so you can see it. And also we're going to go to that folder in C drive, MongoDB, and we're going to create a couple folders here. We're going to create one called Data, and we're going to create one called Log. All right, and then inside Data, we're going to have another one called DB. Okay, and that's where all the data will be stored on the file system. And now let's go to our command line here, and we're going to navigate to the MongoDB folder, and then into the bin folder. All right. Now in here we need to run mongod, and we're going to add a bunch of flags here. So the first one is going to be directory per DB. All right, and then we want to specify DB path, which is going to be the path to the folder we just created. So C drive / MongoDB /data/DB. And if you didn't install in your C drive MongoDB, just put whatever location you used. All right, and that's why I wanted to change that long location path. All right, so after that, we're going to say --log path, and that's going to be C drive /MongoDB/log, and then we're going to say /mongo.log. Okay, so that's going to be the file that all the MongoDB logs write to. And then we just want to specify --log append and --rest and then --install. Okay, and that's going to allow us to run it as a service. So let's go ahead and run that, and now we should be able to run the service with net start MongoDB. Okay, and now it says it's starting, and it started successfully. Okay, so we now have MongoDB installed, and it's also running in the background as a service. Now we're going to be working in the Mongo shell, and we can run that by simply typing Mongo from within the bin directory. Alright, so we're now in the shell. I'm just going to do, I think, CLS, and that clears everything out. Now to show us a list of databases, we can do show DBs, and it shows us that there's one default database there called local, which we're not going to touch. We want to create a new database. So to do that, we're going to say use, and then whatever we want to call it, we'll say my customers. And you can see that not only did it create it, but it also switched us to that database. And if you ever want to check what current database you're in, you can just do DB, and it'll tell you. Now I just want to quickly go over the syntax for a document. So I'm going to open up Notepad, and a lot of the queries that I do, I'm going to put in Notepad first, and then just copy them and paste them in just for readability. Alright, now basically when we're working with a document, it's just like a JSON object or a JavaScript object. We have a set of curly braces, and then we have a field with a value, okay, and then a comma, and you can just keep adding fields. So let's say if we have a customer, we may want them to have a first name. Okay, strings will have quotes around them, and let's say last name. Alright, so these are just very simple string fields, alright, or string values. If you want, we can also have an array as a value. So let's say maybe there's memberships, and we want an array with all the different memberships that this user is in, that this customer is in. So maybe mem1, mem2, and so on. Okay, so we can have arrays. We can also have objects. So let's say address, and that's represented with curly braces, and you might have a street. And a city, and so on. Okay, you can also have arrays of objects, so maybe we'll have one called phones, and actually that's not really a good example. Maybe contacts. So if we have an array, and you may have, let's say, name, Brad, whoops, and then maybe relationship, friend, and so on. Alright, and you could do a comma here and then add another one. So you can have different types of values. Now before we go and we start inserting data, I want to just create a simple user for this database. So if we go to, I'm just going to search for it. We'll say MongoDB create user. Okay, so db.createUser will create a user for that database in this format here. So we're going to say over here db.createUser, and we'll pass in some curly braces, and let's specify, what is it, user user, and we'll just say Brad, and then password or PWD, and roles. Okay, roles I believe is an array. Okay, it can be an array of objects, but I think we can make it more simple. Yeah, I just want this right here, read write, so that we can read and write to the database, and also as an admin. So I'm just going to grab that and we'll paste that in, and then let's copy that, paste that in and run it, and now you'll see it says successfully added user. Okay, so now that we have a user, let's start to add some data. So to do that, we use insert. So we say db dot, and then whatever oh, we didn't create a collection, did we? All right, so let's back up a little bit. Collections are very similar to tables in a relational database. Basically, they hold documents or records. So to create a collection, we're going to say db dot create collection and pass in the name of the collection, which will say customers. Alright, and then if we want to see all the collections in this database, we can simply say show collections. Alright, now if we want to insert a document into that collection, we say db.customers.insert. Alright, and then that's going to take in some curly braces, and let's say first name John, last name Doe. Okay, so if we go ahead and run that, we get an inserted one. Okay, so it inserted one document. Now if we want to see the documents in a collection, we can say db.customers.find, and you can see it gives us that list of documents, which we only have one, has our first name and last name, but it also has this underscore ID field, which is set to be an object ID. All right, and this is used as a unique value to find documents and do some other stuff. But notice that it was automatically created. Okay, so we don't have to worry about creating an ID field, setting it to auto increment, setting it as a primary key. These are all things that you have to do in a relational database. All right, so let's go ahead and add a couple more. Now if we want to add multiple documents at once, we can just make an array. So put square brackets, oops, put square brackets around it like that, and let's change this name. We'll change him to Stephen Smith, and then let's put a comma here, and then another user or customer with a first name. We'll say Joan, last name, we'll say Johnson. Okay, now with a relational database, we would have to specify that the customers table would have to have a first name and a last name, and that's it. They couldn't just on the fly add another field, and that's what's great about NoSQL is we can do that. So for Joan Johnson, let's say we want to add a gender, and we'll set that as female. Whoops. Okay, so we'll set that as female, and then let's go ahead and enter. And now if we do a find, you'll see that Joan has a gender field. Okay, even though we didn't specify that for John and Stephen, it's fine. Okay, you can have whatever fields you want on whatever documents you want. All right, now we only have a couple fields, so this looks nice and clean. But if you have a ton of fields here, it can get kind of messy. So we can add onto find. We can say dot pretty, just kind of a helper function, and you'll see that it makes it nice and neat for us. All right, so let's look at updating a field. All right, so let's say that for John Doe, we want to add a gender to him as well. So what we would do is db.customers.update, and first parameter is going to be a match. So we want to match name or actually let's do first name to John. Okay, so it's going to match anyone that has the first name of John. Now, if you're building a production application, you probably don't want to use something like first name because other people can also have that name, so it's going to update all of them. You'd probably want to use either the object ID or some other unique field, but just for simplicity, we're going to use first name. So then the next parameter is going to be what we want to replace it with. Okay, so we'll say first name, John, last name, Doe, and gender, male. Alright, so we'll go ahead and run that. It says it matched 1, modified 1. So if we look at the find, now you can see that John Doe has a gender of male. Now notice when we did the update, we had to also specify first and last name again, even though it was already there. If we didn't do that and we just said gender male, it would basically replace the entire thing with just that gender male. Now there is a way around that, and that's by using the set operator. Alright, so let's say Stephen Smith, we want to add a gender to him. Alright, so we can say update, and let's say first name equal to Stephen. And then for the second parameter, I'm just going to get rid of this. Okay, we do want to keep the curly braces, and inside there we're going to say $set. Alright, and then we're going to set that to another set of curly braces, and we'll say gender male. So using set, it's going to keep whatever is there previously and then just add this on. So if we go ahead and run that, and then we do a find, you'll see that Stephen Smith still has his first name and last name and just added the gender. Now we also have an operator called inc, which can increment numeric values for us. So first thing I want to do is just add to Stephen. I'm going to add an age, and let's say 45. Actually, we want to get rid of the quotes. 45. Alright, so now if we do a find, you can see that he has an age of 45. Now if we want to increment that, we can say db dot customers dot update, and we want to match first name Stephen, and then here we want to put our curly braces, and then we're going to specify $inc, go like that, and then we want to age, and then the number we want to increment. So let's increment 5. Okay, he just aged 5 years. Let's see what. Oh, I didn't put curly braces around this. Alright, so now if we do find, you can see that Stephen is now 50. Okay, it added 5, incremented. Now we also have an operator called unset if we want to remove a field. So let's say db dot customers dot update, and we want to specify first name Stephen, and then let's put, for our next parameter, we're going to say $unset, and we'll say unset. I think we can do unset age. Let's try that. Nope, age is not defined. Alright, so we need to do unset, and then curly braces, and then age. I think it's like that. Yeah, okay, so age 1, and then let's do a find, and now Stephen doesn't have age anymore. Now let's see what happens if we try to update something that isn't a match, something that isn't there. Alright, so let's say db.customers update, and put in some curly braces, and we'll say first name Mary, and then we want to update We'll say first name Mary and last name Samson. Alright, so let's go ahead and run that. And you'll see that the result is 0 all across. So if we do a find now, it's the same. But if we want to say if this isn't found, then insert it, we can add an option called upsert. So let's go back to that query, and then we're going to set a third parameter here, which is some options, and we're going to say upsert, set that to true, and then we'll run that, and now you can see that we get 1 inserted, or upserted rather, and it also includes an object ID. So now if we do our find, you can see that Mary has now been added and an object ID has been created. Now we also have an operator called rename that we can use with update. So if we say db.customers.update, db customers update, and let's say where first name is equal to Stephen, and then for the second parameter here we're going to say let's do curly braces and then rename, and we should be able to rename, let's say gender, we'll rename that to sex. I think that's the syntax. Rename, oh no, wait, we gotta put curly braces around this. Okay. Alright, so now if we do a find, now you can see that with Steve Smith, gender has changed to sex. Alright, so those are some of the operators we can use with update. Now to remove documents is very easy. We can just say db.customers.remove, and then let's specify where first name is equal to Stephen. Okay, you can see we get n removed 1, and now if we do a find, Stephen's gone. Now, by default, that query we just ran, the remove, it would delete all customers with the first name of Stephen, but you could add a parameter here. You could set inside your options, there's one called just one, and you could set that to true. Alright, I believe it's true or 1, but you can set that, and then it's only going to delete the first Stephen it finds. It's not going to delete all of them. Alright, so just kind of a safety option. Alright, so I want to show you a few other things, but I want some more data to work with. So I'm going to, in Notepad, I'm going to just paste in a query to add some more data. Alright, so we basically just have an insert here with some fields for our customers: first name, last name, gender, age, address, which is an object, memberships, which is an array, and then balance. Okay, so we have, what is it, I think 4 or 5 of them. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to go over here and paste that in and run it. You can see it's inserted 5. So if we go and we do find, you can see the different customers that were added. Alright, now I think up to this point we've just done find with no parameters. So what I want to do is db customers.find, and we can pass in a query here. So let's say we want to find Sharon, so we could say first name Sharon. Okay, and that's going to give us all Sharon's information. Now let's say we wanted to find Sharon and Troy. Alright, so what we could do is use the OR operator. So let's say db.customers.find, and let's pass in our curly braces, and then we're going to say $or, set that, and then put some square brackets for an array, and we'll say first name Sharon, put a comma here, and we'll say first name Troy. Okay, if we run that, you can see that it gives us back Troy's information and Sharon's. Okay, now we can do a simple find for a different field that is going to match multiple results. So for instance, gender, if we say find gender and change that to male, if we run that, it's going to give us everybody that has the gender of male. Now we can also use greater than or less than operators. So let's say we want to find everyone that is under the age of 40. So we'll say db dot customers dot find, and in here we're going to pass in age, and in here we're going to open up some curly braces, and we'll say $GT, and we'll set that to, actually, do we want to do less than? We'll do LT, set that to 40. Okay, and that's given us back, actually let's add pretty to the end here. Okay, so that gives us back everybody that is under 40. You'll see Troy's 33, 23, and 35. All right, and obviously you can do GT for greater than. All right, now there's also LTE, which is less than or equal to, and GTE, which is greater than or equal to. Now let's say we want to find everyone that lives in the city of Boston. So you can see that we have for our address, which is an object, which has street, city, and state. So what we can do is we'll say db.customers.find, and in here we're going to use quotes here and say address.city, and then here we'll say Boston. Okay, we run that, and it gives us the two people that have their city as Boston. Okay, when we're dealing with objects like this, we have to wrap it in quotes. You'll see if I go and take these quotes off, it gives us an error. And I should mention that there are some clients and programs that will require you to use quotes in the key as well. So just remember that. If you're having issues in some other client, just try that and see if that helps. All right, now if we want to query the memberships, okay, remember memberships is an array, and that's pretty easy. All we have to do is customers.find, and let's say memberships, and then just the name of it. So let's say mem1. Okay, so that's going to give us everyone that has mem1 inside their memberships array. All right, now next thing I want to talk about is sorting. Okay, so let's do a find. We'll say, actually I'm going to clear this out, and we'll do db.customers.find, and then what we can do is we can add on to this. We'll say .sort. Okay, and then that's going to take in whatever field we want to sort by. So let's say we'll do last name. So we could say last name 1. Okay, so if I set it to 1, that means that it's going to be in ascending order. So if we look at the last name, we have Doe, Jenkins, Johnson, Sampson, Wilkins. Okay, if we wanted descending, then we could just set it to -1. And then you can see, whoops, I want to do .pretty. Okay, now you can see it's going in the opposite direction. Okay, we have Wilkins at the beginning. All right, so that's sorting. We can also count documents. So if we want to do db.customers.find.count and run that, you can see that it gives us 8. Okay, we can also put a query in here if we wanted to. If we say gender male, and it gives us 4, okay, because there's 4 people that are males. We can also limit. So if we want to find, we'll find everybody, but we're going to set a limit. We'll set limit to 4, and you can see that it gives us the first 4. And of course you can combine these, so we could say limit 4 dot sort, and we'll sort by, let's see, last name 1, and there we go. Another cool thing we can do is we can iterate through stuff using for each. Alright, so we'll do db.customers.find, and then we want to say dot for each, and then in here we have a function. We want to pass it a variable, which can be anything. I'm just going to say doc, and then let's say we want to print. Okay, there's a print function we can use, and we'll print the string customer name, and then we can concatenate onto that with a plus sign, okay, just like regular JavaScript, and we'll say doc dot, and then whatever field, first name, and now we're printing out customer name and then whatever the first name is. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and stop here. Now if you enjoyed this, I would suggest checking out the 10 Project MongoDB course. There are a couple projects like this where we're just dealing with the database and the shell, but there's also projects where we're building web applications, implementing different technologies like Angular and Node.js. So I would suggest that. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.